Our major objective today is looking at various options we have for loading and unloading a table. The first option we have is using an external table. Second option we have is ngload command, which is purely for loading the data. Using external tables, I can use either unload or load options. Backup and restore. Backup, you can take entire database. Restore also, you can do the entire database restore. But one facility we have here is like it's available in Oracle 12c. You can do it in place table restore too. If you want to just get only one table, you can get it. ng_migrate, it's a utility available to move data across data centers or across instances without even storing a bit on a local file system. It's a migration of databases over network. It's a utility. What we'll be looking at for the next 60 to 70 minutes is an external tables and ngload command. What is an external table? We all know this, right? What is a table? Table is nothing but a relation which has rows and columns, which is used to store data. Right? It's a logical entity. In Netezza environment, we have three types of tables. One is system table. For example, _t_ database. If I open that, when I say \l, when I log into ngSQL, when I say \l, we see list of databases, right? Where is this information stored? This information is stored in _v_ database view. But it's not stored in this view. These are indirectly stored in a table called _t_ database. Now where are these physically located? This is a table _t_ database. But where are these physically located? These are physically located in ng directory database. You remember this? ng database. Inside one is for system. This is where it gets stored. Now these tables that starts with _t are called system tables. That's the first classification I am making here. System tables are stored on host. That is, metadata gets stored on ng database directory. Whereas when I talk about a normal tables, when I say \dt, this table T1, when I say select count start from table T1, so T1 has two things here. Table T1 has definition, table T1 has two records. The definition is anyway gets stored in ng database directory, but actual data for this table is stored on Netezza host disks. What are those host disks? When you say \!ngds, these are all the host disks available. No, not host disks, these are data disks, data slices. The point I am trying to make here is system tables, both metadata and data get stored in this base directory. For user tables, metadata is in base directory, but actual data gets stored in data slices or disks. These are the two different tables we already experienced. We have experienced already. But the third category I am talking about is external tables. Why the name external table? The metadata has no option. Metadata has to get stored in ng database directory. But actual data, the user data, whenever you insert the data and all that, does not get stored in storage arrays on the top. It gets stored outside Netezza host or a client system or outside these storage arrays. If I have a table with such kind of an storage property, that table we call it as an external table. External table is nothing but the metadata still gets stored in base directory. It's just that the data, the actual data of the table does not get stored in storage arrays. So the name itself says external. The table is external to the storage arrays. An external table allows Netezza to treat an XML file as database table. An XML table has a definition, but the actual data exists outside of the Netezza appliance database. That is outside of the storage arrays. Netezza can treat a file on a client system, for example, like your Windows box or Windows laptop. It can treat a file on your Windows system as an XML table using the remote source option. I will show you this in an example with Agility Workbench. We can use insert into or select from on XML tables. These are the only two operations that are allowed. Let me show you an example to help us understand these XML tables. Here I am connecting to a database called Ravi. I'm creating a table called T1 with two columns. When I just create this table, I have no data in this table, right? My objective is to load some data into this table T1. Now what are all the options I have if I go ahead and do the same thing here? Let me drop, let's say, let me create table, create database called external. Let me create a data set 501. Right here. Okay. So I just created a database called external. Now how do I connect to it? I say that user ID, I say that password. Now when I display tables, I don't have any data here. What I do now, I create a table called T1, column 1 integer, column 2 character. Now when I describe the table, by default you observe here the distribution key is on first column and which is on hashing algorithm. Now my objective is to load these 10 records into the T1 table. What options I have? From the knowledge I have so far, I can write 10 insert statements. For example, like I can write insert into T1 values. I can write like this. I can write 10 insert statements. Here our data set is very small, so we are writing 10 insert statements. What if our data set has a million records? Is it really feasible for us to write million insert statements? It's a tiresome effort, right? It's a waste of time. Now we need a sophisticated way of doing this data load of 10 records or 1000 records or a million records. Right. Now what I'm going to do here is I am going to exit from here. I'm going to go to temp directory. I'm going to open a file called t1.unl and I'm loading. I'm pasting these 10 records. When I say cat t1.unl, I got 10 records. Now my objective is to load these 10 records into T1 table. Now here is the catch. T1 is a relational structure. This T1.unl is a non-relational structure. T1 is a relational structure. T1.unl is a non-relational structure. So I need a mechanism or I need a mediator who can do this conversion from non-relational to relational. That's where the concept of external table came in picture. When I describe \h create external table, right? It will show me how do I create an external table. The syntax. Create external table, table name, same as any existing table. When I use same as, it will inherit the same column properties. Or I can by default say that create external table, table name, column 1, column type. Like this I can define on my own too. There are three different ways of creating an external table. Create external table same as, create external table with column definitions, creating external table without giving an external table name. Right. Now let's use this second option first. Now what I'm saying here is create external table t1 underscore ext. If I go above it again, in brackets I have to say column definitions, column 1 integer, column 2 paragraph 20. This is very good, but I'm not creating a normal table, I'm creating an external table. So I have to specify the external table's properties. How do I specify the properties? Using a class called using various external table options. What are my various external table options? The first one is data object. Where is my data object located? My data object is located in tempt1.unl. Along with this data object, these are all the various options, like how do I insert delimiter, do you want to compress the data? So, what is quotations, how do you represent the quotations, how many rows you want to skip from the starting, right? So what is the record length, what is the maximum number of errors you can allow, what is the format. Now I'm going to use a delimiter. These are all the two options only I'm using right now. One option is data object. This is where the data exists. The delimiter is comma. That means the data separator between the two columns is comma. Okay. Now if you look at here, the create external table is successful. Now when I describe t1 underscore ext, it will have the exact same definition as a normal table, but instead of data distribution, that class, it has a data object and it has various properties of that external table, saying that what is the boolean style, 1 or 0, right? Compressed, false. What is the encoding, which is an internal encoding, which format we are talking about, text format, where the file is located, where it should write the log directory, /temp. So if I don't specify, I have specified only two options. One is data object, another one is delimiter. Right. So remaining all options, it took it from the default options. Now when I say select start from ext underscore t1, sorry, which is select start from t1 underscore ext. Now when I do this select start from t1 underscore ext, it will go back and get the data from this data object and it will display me on the screen. Let me open a duplicate session. For some reason it's taking time. Why? Now what it does here is when I say select start from t1 underscore ext, it internally goes to this data object and displays it on the screen. Just for our information. If I go ahead and add one more record here, for example, if I add in middle 511, a name like this. Now when I say I have 11 records, what it simply does is it simply go and get the data. So now I see 11 records. In place of a 10, I see 11 records. Now the beauty here is once my non-relational data got converted, once my non-relational data got converted into relational data, right, I can apply whatever I want, where column 1 less than or equal to 505. So that's the beauty of this XML table. If you are familiar with ETL or ELT, the E stands for extract, right, and T stands for transformations in this ELT or ETL. The major objective of transformations is, or our ETL job is, it extracts the data from source systems and it gives them a relational structure so that you can apply various transformation operations. Right. The key thing there is how do you convert non-relational structures into relational structures. That's exactly the same thing done by external table. Now once I have my relational data, non-relational data in a relational format, it's up to me, right? Whatever the transformations I want to apply. I don't have to select always all the columns. I just have to select column 2 from T1 underscore ext, where column 1 less than or column 1 equal to 511. Just the data what I want. Let's not misguide from our initial objective of loading into T1 table. Now all I have to do is when I say select start from T1, I see no data. But there was nothing. It was the table created 5 minutes back. Now I say insert into T1, simply say that select start from T1 underscore. You see here the insert statement, it said that 11 rows inserted. Now when I say select start from T1, I see those 11 records. But the moment the insert happens to T1 table, what happens to the data within this guy? It still exists. Whenever I fire a select statement against this external table, it's literally going and getting the data from this flat file. Also, I have now the data in T1 table. But one thing I want to show to you right now is if I see the row ID, create XID, delete XID, data slice ID, comma start from T1. All these records have a same transaction ID. Why they all have a same transaction ID? Because all these 11 records were inserted as part of same insert statement. That's one more point to, side point to observe. Right. Any questions till this point?
So is it not like each record, whenever we insert, like each record will have a separate create XID, or I mean, say for example, like if you're, I was in assumption that each record it will create a separate create XID.
The transaction ID create XID is associated with the transaction, right? So this insert into select star is a single transaction here.
Okay.
Whatever happens, it's having only one single transaction ID. It's like a same begin and commit logic, right? So Oracle is not auto commit, but Netezza is auto commit. That does not mean, that I cannot start transaction here. This is an implicit transaction. So if you just want, that's what Srinivas was asking at the start of a class. If you want to explicitly commit, you have to explicitly do the begin. But here what's happening is we are doing kind of a mass inserts. If I insert 1 million records, each million, I mean all million records will get the same transaction ID. Because
Okay.
you let's say sometimes what happens is, let me show you this. If I say delete, or let's say if I update C2, so update T1, set column 2 equal to Ravi Kumar, where column 1 equal to 502. What went wrong?
C1 is ID, right? I mean, it's a
Sorry.
number, I think.
Yes, sorry, it should be C2. Right, this is another interesting story with Netezza. Update is a multi-step process, right? When I say, you see the data got updated, 502 Ravi Kumar. But the interesting thing is this has a different transaction ID. That's good. 39234 was the previous ones, 39254. But when I said show underscore deleted underscore records equal to true, and when I run the same select statement, now I see 12 records. Instead of 11, I see 12. But I did not delete any record, right? Why did this extra 12th record came? From where it came? If you look at this is my previous version of the row called Ravi Kumar. The previous version is undated and the new version will be created. If you look at the previous version, Ravi delete XID and the current records create XID are same. What I'm trying to show here is when I'm trying to update a table or when I'm trying to update a record, right? It does two things in the backend. One, it undates the current record with a delete XID, and the same delete XID will be the create XID for new record. Right. Just
Okay. Yeah. So basically, for delete, it captured the history, and for update, it captured the previous. I mean, the record which was previous before the update.
right. So update is a multi-step process. That's what I'm trying to show.
Okay.
And in that
Okay.
multi-step process, you get the same transaction ID. So deleted record will have the delete XID, and the same is used for create XID for the newly inserted record. So update is nothing but delete plus insert. So that's why people might use the word called updates in it is are costly.
Okay.
Right. Now coming back here, right. So our initial objective of loading 11 records is done. Right. Now just unloading is just exactly opposite to it. Right. So let's say now we have set show underscore deleted underscore records equal to false. Now when I say select start from T1, I see 11 records, but some data was changed here, especially this record. Now my objective is to unload this table. For example, a business user like Srinivasa approached me and said that, Ravi, I am doing some modifications to this table. Can you keep a backup of this table, right? Can you create a backup of this table and store somewhere so that in worst case, we might have to roll back to that backup. Now, when I receive such request as take a backup of a table, I have two options here. One is create table T1 underscore backup underscore 20th September as select start from T1. This is a first option called CTAS option. This option is called CTAS, create table as, right? But the advantage of this is it is pretty faster, of course, because it is within the database. But the disadvantage is it stores the data within database. So that means it's going to occupy same space as a T1 table, right? This is option one. Second option is external tables. If I don't want to store the table, for example, it's like 300, 400 gig table, why do I waste space within the database, right? I will store somewhere in the local file system. So for that, the first thing I do is I create an external table. I say that create external table t1 underscore ext underscore screening same as t1. When I say same as t1, it will inherit the same properties of t1, column 1 and column 2, and I use a word called using data object temp t1 underscore string dot unl. UNL just I am using it to mention it's an unloaded file, nothing else. And I say this delimiter is 5. Now what happened? The create external table got succeeded. So once I have my create external table completed, when I say select start from t1 underscore ext underscore screen, it says that this is not found because there is no such file at this point. My objective is this insert into external table. I simply say select start from t1. Now what it does, it will go ahead and create this file. Right. When I say cat, it creates that file. Now I also have the updated record here. Right. There are two ways. Like I said, one is CTAS, create table as, another one is external table. External table is both ways. You can insert the data, I mean in the sense you can load the data or you can unload the data. For both, the mediator is external table. For both, the mediator is external table. If you look at this whole process, right, you can see the external tables using \dx option. To load the T1 table, we use this external table. To unload, we use this external table. Of course, you can use the same external table to unload as well, right? But the data object needs to be what you are looking for. Now, the headache with these external tables is the moment you create all these external tables, this stays like a permanent table. It's our responsibility or it's a DBA maintenance headache to remove them or drop them. So it's as equivalent as drop table t1 underscore ext, drop table t1 underscore ext underscore string. But the question here comes often is what happens to the data object? The data object still stays as it is. The data object still stays as it is. Right. And one more important thing is it writes a log file. Whenever you do external insert or external unload, load or unload, it writes a log file. The log file name is table name, schema name, and database name .ng log. Right. So .ng log, just a log information about what exactly happened. Right. So number of records read is 10. Number of records loaded is 10. Just gives you a quick idea about what's happening. So this .ng log is a single log file. It gets appended. So if I do load again to this t1 underscore ext, it will write it into the same file at the end, .ng log. If there are any errors, it generates a file called .ng bad. I'll show you that with the next example called ngload option. Now what we are looking at here is, so far we are looking at one option called external tables. We looked at 4 different options, right? We're discussing. One is external table, second one is ng load, third one is backup or restore, fourth one is ng migrate utility. So using that external tables, we have an option to load the data or unload the data. But the tool we have used is ngSQL. So what if ngSQL is sitting on a different host? Here we are trying sitting on host, right? What if I want to do it from Windows? What if I want to do it from non-host, right? So since I am on host, this is working fine for me. What if I don't sit on this host? What if I sit on some HP Unix client environment and I want to do it through ngSQL? What if I sit on like Windows box, right? So every day someone FTPs the file to my local Windows environment from where I need to load the data regularly, right? It's exact same process, just that you use an option called remote source as ODBC. Same thing. Create XML table t1 underscore ext. So use column 1 integer, column 2 character of 10 using data object. You use here file c1 data t1.unl delimiter, whatever the delimiter. Instead of putting semicolon right away here, you say that remote source as ODBC. That's it. When I say remote source as ODBC, what I am trying to tell is the data file does not locate on the host. It exists on the client side, external to the Netezza host. Let me show you that one example. Let me show you one example. Here I am creating a file called, so let's say 512 chai 513 maxwell 514. Okay, let's say I have only these 3 records to save. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to save it to t1.unl and I go for option of all files and I click on save. So these 3 records I have it in t1.unl and my objective is to load those 3 records into t1 table, which is a database I have to choose here, Excel. Now what I do is I create, if I go back here and say ngSQL -db external When I say \dx, there are no relations for no external tables I have right now, right? What I do here is, it's not very slow. My system is getting slow. I say create external table t1 underscore ext underscore windows. I say same as t1, and I say using data object c colon w consulting temp t1.unl. I say delimiter is pipe symbol. Here I have to say remote source as ODBs. This is the only extra clause we have to use. When I run this by clicking execute, I messed up somewhere.
Ravi, remote source as we have to give or just remote source?
No, remote source is fine. I think it's within here.
Okay.
I just have to use this option here. Yeah, it's just one of the using options, right?
Okay.
Now, the same thing here. When I say select start from t1 underscore ext underscore windows, it should get me those 3 records. It says 3 rows affected. It should show me those 3 records. These are the 3 records. Now if I go back here and run this same \dx command now, I should see this relation. When I say this select start from t1 underscore ext underscore win, it will fail, saying that this external table was created with remote source ODBC, so you cannot run it from this box. Right. Now this is only useful from wherever you created it, because that's where you have locally the data object. Now I have to say insert into t1, select start from t1 underscore ext underscore windows. Like this, you might see number of external tables getting created. So as a DBA, it's one of your jobs to make sure these objects got dropped on a regular basis. So three rows affected, but it says that unable to write ng, log or bad files. So that's okay. Whereas you might have specified this log file or bad file. So when I say select start from T1, you should see those extra 3 records here. 11, 12, 12, 13 and 14. See what I'm saying? It's the same options, exact same procedure except that use remote source as ODBs. That's the same things I'm trying to show you in these slides as well. What operations we can do on external tables? You can insert, you can drop an external table. You can join an external table with a database table, but you can't delete, truncate and update an external table because it makes no sense. They are just the flat files. Also, not more than one external table in a from or where clause in a query or subquery you can use it. No union operation between external tables. Statistics are automatically generated for external tables. We did not cover these statistics yet, but stats is nothing but physical properties of the table will automatically generate it. So this is the same scenario on load we are talking about. If you look at this whole process of external table, we have to create an external table, we have to insert or select data, then we have to drop an external table. It's a three-step process. It's a three-step process. The first one, you have to create an external table, insert or load, insert or select, then drop an external table. So there is a concept from Netezza which says that, so if I know that I don't use that external table name going forward, I'm going to drop it. If I am going to drop it, first of all, why to create it, right? So that's where they came up with a concept called transient external tables. That means the external table name is only valid for that transaction. Transient external tables, TET, provide a way to define an external table that exists only for the duration of a single query, only for that query. How do I export data using TET? How do I export data using TET? Create external table. Instead of table name, I directly use here data object. Instead of table name, what happens when I give a table name is it helps me to automate things, right? If the same file is keep coming every day, right? So it helps me to do that in a scripting. But it's just like one-time job. Why do I have to give a table name, external table name here? Create external table name, flat file using, you don't have data object anymore, it's just a delimiter and rest of the options. So similarly the import, insert into customer table, select start from, instead of giving external table name, we say that external syntax and the flat file. We say using whatever are the options you have. The three-step process has been reduced to one step. Right. Similarly, we also can give other options such as format as internal, compress as true. So for the output, whenever I do unload, the output is coming up in a text format, right? The same way, if I just say describe, the format is text here. That means we are playing on a text format. That's human readable format, right? What if you don't want to store the data in a human readable format? So that's when you can go for format as internal. It will store the data in binary format. And the moment you use binary format, you have to say compressed true because the data in those disks is by default compressed. That concludes external table options. However, Netezza went further a little ahead and said that this whole process involves us writing an SQL statement. As a DBA, we might not be good at writing SQL statements, right? We need tools, we need commands, we need simple options. SQL is for developers. So that's when they came up with a concept called a command-based data load. And the name of that command-based data load option is ngload. Like ngSQL, ngload is a CLI utility which can work from Windows or any platform, right? Whereas ngSQL is not available on Windows, but ngload does not have such restriction. It is available on all platforms. ngload is command line interface program. We can provide inputs to ngload through command line or through a control file. It does nothing fancy, right? It does the same external table concept, right? But it does it internally. Without we knowing it, it does it internally. ngload command is just a wrapper to create external table and insert to. Please note that you can only do load of a data. You cannot do unloading with this ngload. As the name says, it's only ngload. ngload allows you to load data from localhost or a remote client, even on Windows. ngload command is an ODBC client application that loads data remotely or locally. You can use ngload command on the Netezza host and on all supported client platforms. Of course, statistics are generated for load operations. So this is what happens. ngload takes a set of command line options. The options such as we pass it to ngSQL using -d and -t and -schema options. Similarly, it takes a bunch of options and it converts those options. Ngload converts those options into queries, and it does the load and drops external table and returns us the command prompt again. Now, if I show you what I am talking about, these are the options. My objective is to load the source file into table T1. So I just have to pass which database, which is a schema, which is a table, what is a delimiter, maximum number of errors I can allow while loading the data, where is my data file location. Also I can pass host name, user ID, password, right? So how should I have a date delimiter, how should I have a date style, all these options. If I show you that with a simple T1 example here, and I say ngSQL -db extern -c, if I see count of records, the T1 table, I have 14 records, right? Now what I do here is let's go to the temp directory and let's load this T1 underscore cine.unl to T1 table. Now to do this, all I have to do is ngload which database, extern database, which table, T1 table. What is the delimiter? I don't remember what is the delimiter. Pipe is a delimiter. So I just have to pass this bunch of options. Delimiter. The data file location is temp. UML. Am I missing anything else? Now what happens here is if you look at the return status, echo $, it's a 0. The load is successful. Right? In this database, in this table, I should have passed even the schema name using -schema. Otherwise it points to default admin schema. Delimiter is pipe symbol. It did load from this .unl file, right? When I run this same select statement, this time I see 14 plus 11 records added here. The important thing here is it generates a log file. Table name, schema name, database name, .nglog. This log is just a log which talks about what happened. It read 11 records and loaded 11 records. And the load options. Now let me open the same UNL file and let me create some bad data. Let me create some bad data. Here my second record has a bad record. So there is no pipe symbol. Now let me try to load the same data here. If I'm trying to run same ngload operation, it will fail. It fails saying that count of bad input rows reached maximum errors limit. That means the maximum errors limit I have is 1. The moment the bad input rows reaches 1, it fails. While it failing, it also writes a bad file saying that where is a bad record it hit. Where is the bad record it hit. So if you look at this .log file, it just appends to the previous data. So it just writes that number of records read is 2, but it encountered one bad record. But the maximum errors I can only allow is 1. The moment it reaches the 1 error, the first error, the count reaches 1, it throws an error saying that can't load further. Maximum errors reached. But Sometimes while I load a million records or 10 million records, it's quite common to have bad data. See, I don't want my load to stop abruptly halfway through it, the moment it encounters a bad record, right? So if I don't want that to happen, I have to give an option here called max errors as, let's say 4 or 3. Till you find 3 bad records, it's okay for me to load the data. But when you look at the return code won't be 0 anymore. 2. The ng load return status 0 means it loaded all the records, no bad records. When it is 2, it means it is successful, load is successful. But there are some bad records. You can find those bad records here. If you look at this log file and go to the end, it read 11 records but loaded only 10. There is one bad record. But your ng load won't stop because the count is only 1. You have 11 still 3. Right. So just various options. So even the external table has all those options. Right. But the only flexibility ng load gives is as a DBA I don't have to so much worry about what kind of SQL syntax to use. Right. This is much easier for me, right? Which is much easier for me to automate things through shell scripts. Right. So those are the same options we've been covered here. So what happens when I use nglog, how nglog looks like, the same thing. How do I change? The default location for nglog is current directory or the external data object location. How do I change it? 0 means success, 2 means success, but the count of bad input records did not cross the max error specified. Failed is 1. So similarly ng bad, maximum errors options. Right. One more option that I can try with ngload is control file. If I'm still lazy about typing all these options, right, what I can do is I create a simple control file and I put all these options there like this. I create one control file as t1.ctl, any name, extension doesn't matter. So and I say that inside the data file is this location, database, table name, delimiter, log file, bad file. Such options I write it here. All I do is simply I pass this control file as an input to ngload. Actually, this helps me to standardize data loads in my environment. If I keep getting the same request, load this table, load the table, unload, unload, there is such kind of request, especially loading. So I can ask my junior to just go in here and just modify table 1, table name, and log file and bad file. Just give that as an input. Right. The final options that's available with ngload is the key to this whole loading or unloading process is delimiter. Right. So we are saying that okay, pipe is a delimiter, comma is a delimiter, right? XYZ, X is a delimiter. So some kind of a delimiter we are agreeing with the client. What if I cannot agree with the client on a delimiter? What if, right? So I'm trying to propose that pipe, but pipe is part of input. I'm proposing comma, but comma is part of an input. What to do in such scenario, right? I have no option other than agreeing for a fixed format. What do I mean by fixed format is I'll request my client to send the data always in a fixed format, saying that, okay, you are going to send me 3 columns, always send first column in 5 digits. Always send first column in 5 digits. Always send character data in 4 characters. Again digits in 5 digits. Like this, a fixed way we have to agree. In a fixed format, each row is of same length. Otherwise, I'll get confused, right? If you send one row in one format, another row in another format, I'll get confused. I can't automate this stuff, right? So if you don't have enough data for a first column, put either hashes, either spaces or zeros. I will handle it. Similarly, if you don't have enough data for characters, put spaces before or after. But we have to agree on that, the fixed format, right? While I do load, what I do is I use this option called -format fixed. When I say fixed, I have to define the layout. I'm going to load into table T1, which has 3 columns, column 1, column 2, column 3. Column 1 is of integer 4, but the bytes are 5 here. It takes the first 5 bytes and loads into this int4. When it takes 4 bytes, byte is nothing but one character here. It takes these 4 characters and loads it into C2. Then it takes 5 characters and loads it into int4. Right? Similarly, you can use maximum errors options and all those options. We are just using this format and layout options. This is a very, very rare scenario, but still possible. Still possible. That actually concludes even this ng load. Right. If I quickly put it on a paper, what we have covered, we covered about external tables, load, unload, transient external tables, internal format external tables. These are very useful when I transfer the data between one server to another server, where the footprint in a binary format is less, and the load and unload works pretty faster with internal format rather than text. Then we used ng load with control file option as well, and we looked at max errors options. We looked at ng log, ng bad, and fixed format. What I'll be looking at in the next session is how do we backup and restore at database level, and how do I restore at table level. Please note that the only way I can take a table level backup is CTAS or external table. There is no option. You cannot backup a single table using a backup command, but you can restore it. The only way you can backup a table is external table or CTAS. Any questions?